The first sliver of dawn, usually a promise of opportunity for Clark Kingsley, a man who had built his mid-sized logistics empire from the ground up, felt instead like a heavy shroud this particular Tuesday. A dull ache throbbed behind his temples, mirroring the unease in his heart. He had no desire to face the day's demands, especially not the crucial investor meeting looming on his calendar. He'd gladly postpone it, push it off to another week, but that was impossible. And besides, he knew with a weary certainty that this dark cloud wouldn't simply lift by tomorrow. His disquiet stemmed from a far deeper source, his grown son, Conrad. A quiet, diligent boy who grew into a capable young man, never causing a moment's worry. He'd excelled in his studies, then seamlessly transitioned into the family business, becoming Clark's most trusted aide. Life had been a smooth, predictable current, until a few months ago. That's when Conrad had met her, and their connection had blossomed with an alarming speed, quickly deepening into something profoundly serious. Just last week, over a strained dinner, Conrad had dropped the bombshell. "Dad," he had begun, his voice uncharacteristically soft, "I'm going to ask Melody to marry me." Clark had nearly choked on his prime rib. "Marry? Conrad, what are you saying? You were going to propose to Charlotte Sanders. We'd talked about this, remember? The future, the merger of our families, the synergy." Clark had envisioned that union as a cornerstone of their legacy, a seamless blend of love and strategic advantage. Conrad had met his father's gaze, his own eyes, usually so clear and direct, now clouded with a dreamy, faraway look. "That was your plan, Dad, and maybe her father's. Perhaps even Charlotte herself had hopes, but honestly, those thoughts were never truly mine." He paused, a gentle sigh escaping him. "I won't deny, Charlotte is a wonderful woman, intelligent, charming, beautiful, but I don't love her, and Melody." His voice trailed off, a soft, almost reverent whisper, as if speaking her name aloud might break a fragile spell. Clark's brow furrowed, a deep crease forming between his eyes. "Melody? Who in the world is Melody? Where did she even come from?" The name felt alien, a discordant note in the carefully orchestrated symphony of his plans. Clark was no tyrant. He would never force his son into a loveless marriage for mere gain, but the thought of Conrad marrying Charlotte Sanders, the elegant daughter of Richard Sanders, the formidable owner of a sprawling national freight company, had been a cherished paternal dream. The union would have been beneficial in every conceivable way, a powerful alliance that would elevate their standing. And Charlotte truly was a fine young woman, educated, poised with a quick, intelligent wit. She and Conrad would have made an admirable couple, a true power pair. And then this. Melody. At first, Clark hadn't been overly concerned. Conrad was young, handsome, always financially comfortable. It was only natural that young women, Melodies of the world, would gravitate towards him. Perhaps it was even a good thing. Conrad wasn't known for his impulsiveness. He was sensible, grounded. Clark had reasoned that Conrad would eventually come to his senses, realise the fleeting nature of such a dalliance, and quietly end things with this unknown girl. Many young men had their youthful infatuations, after all. But one day, when Clark came to visit his son, he realised how wrong he had been. While drinking his coffee, he noticed a pregnancy test hidden under a crumpled paper napkin in the trash can. He didn't dare take it out and didn't know what the result was, but the mere sight of it filled him with cold horror. This was serious, too serious. He needed to talk to his son, really talk to him, with all the weight of a father's concern. He decided against mentioning his unsettling discovery. Instead, he approached Conrad with a stern, almost formal tone, steering the conversation back to the topic of Charlotte Sanders. "Son, are we back to this again?" Conrad asked, a note of exasperation creeping into his voice. "Dad, I've already explained. I have a different fiancé, and we might be getting married very soon. The matter is closed." "And Charlotte?" Clark pressed, his voice tight. Conrad shrugged, a dismissive gesture that grated on Clark's nerves. "I'm sure she'll find plenty of suitors. She won't be pining for me." "It's not about her pining, Conrad. It's about us, about our future. We can't afford to alienate Richard Sanders. Her father will be deeply offended that you courted his daughter without making a proposal. And why? For some melody." Clark winced, a private, almost superstitious thought flickering through his mind. Melody, that name. Every time he had heard a woman named Melody, problems seemed to follow like a shadow. Conrad, oblivious to his father's internal musings, stood his ground. "There was nothing between Charlotte and me. We barely spoke a few times, just polite conversation. Honestly, Dad, why would I want her? She's wealthy, yes, and perhaps a little spoiled. And from what I gather, she has no immediate plans to marry. She's perfectly content living off her father's fortune. But my Melody, oh, she's not some anything. When you meet her, you'll understand how right I was. No, she doesn't have rich parents or a trust fund. But she is a truly wonderful person. Genuine, deeply kind." "Excellent," Clark said, a forced smile playing on his lips. "So, when exactly do I get to meet this deeply kind person? Why are you seeing her in secret?" "I'm not seeing her in secret, Dad. You'll meet her soon enough. What's the rush? The time will come and you'll both see each other. Don't worry." Conrad, clearly unwilling to continue the conversation, turned and left the room. Left alone, Clark paced the polished oak floor of his study. "What am I supposed to make of all this?" he thought, running a hand through his thinning silver hair. "If this girl was so wonderful, why the secrecy?" It reeked of evasion, of something not quite right. "A conspirator," he mused. "Something is clearly amiss here." "Fine," he decided, a steely resolve hardening his jaw. "I'll find out for myself who this Melody is. Maybe I'll even talk to her." Later that afternoon, when Conrad pulled his sleek dark sedan out of the driveway, clearly not headed for the office, Clark slipped into his own discreet charcoal grey car. He kept a respectful distance, a few cars' lengths back, careful not to lose sight of Conrad's vehicle. He hoped Conrad, lost in his own thoughts, wouldn't notice the tail. Fortunately, the drive wasn't long. Conrad navigated through the winding, tree-lined streets of an older, quiet residential area on the outskirts of town. He finally pulled up to a modest, two-story house with a cheerful red door and gave a quick, almost imperceptible honk. A moment later, the front door opened, and a young woman, a flash of bright summer dress, darted out and slipped into Conrad's car. The happy couple then drove away, disappearing around the corner. To Clark's frustration, he hadn't been able to get a clear look at his son's beloved. He pulled his black sedan to the curb, a good distance from Conrad's car, just as the happy couple disappeared from view. He hadn't gotten a good look at her, not really, just a fleeting impression, slight of build, slender. Living in a place like this, Clark thought, a sour taste in his mouth as he surveyed the modest, somewhat worn two-storey house. The paint on the porch railing was peeling, and the small front yard, though neat, lacked the manicured perfection he associated with prosperity. And she seemed dressed so simply. Nothing special at all. Just as I suspected. She's latched onto my boy, and she won't let go. He imagined a predatory gleam in her eyes, a calculated sweetness. They're all so kind and genuine at first, aren't they? Until that little stick shows 2 lines, and then the demands begin. He did not follow Conrad and Melody. Instead, he returned the next morning to assess the situation, understand the roots of this unexpected and confusing affair, and perhaps get a look at his son's mysterious girlfriend. Parking his car across the street, he approached the house he was looking for. The gate to the small yard was ajar, inviting him to enter. There was no doorbell, only a long painted wooden door that had clearly seen many seasons. He knocked sharply and impatiently. "No doorbell," he muttered under his breath, his disdain growing. "And look at this place. The door's scuffed, the yard's a bit overgrown. Just as I thought. This girl won't let go of Conrad for anything. Probably some penniless opportunist. Over the moon to have caught a man like him." He knocked again, harder this time. Slow, hesitant footsteps sounded from within. The door creaked and opened, and a woman appeared in the doorway. Clark Kingsley froze, his jaw dropping. The thing was, he knew the woman standing in front of him, and he didn't just know her. He had once loved her, deeply. Many years ago, they had had a whirlwind romance and even talked about marriage, but fate, or perhaps his own fears, had prevented them from getting together. And now she was someone connected to his son. All the pieces of Conrad's secret fell into place with a sickening thud. "Natalie," Clark stammered, taking an involuntary step back, as if he had been struck. "Yes, it's me. Hello, Clark." Her voice was cool, distant, betraying no warmth, only a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Just then a boy, no older than 10, emerged from behind her, peering curiously at the stranger. "Mum, is he here for us?" he asked, his voice a childish treble, full of innocent surprise. You have a son?" Clark blurted out, the words ripped from him, raw and disbelieving. I didn't know." "Yes, a son," Natalie replied, her tone still flat, devoid of emotion. It was impossible, of course, to discuss their complicated past, their tangled emotions, in front of the child. And perhaps it was impossible anyway. What was there to discuss? Everything between them had ended long ago. It had ended when she married his friend, and, apparently soon after, she had given birth to this very boy. What could they possibly say to each other now? Clark Kingsley was so utterly blindsided, so lost in the swirling vortex of the past, that he simply didn't know what to do. And Natalie, he could tell, was equally uncomfortable, clearly wanting to end this unexpected encounter as quickly as possible. Understanding this, Clark mumbled, "Forgive me, I made a mistake." He turned abruptly, his heart a leaden weight in his chest, and strode quickly back towards his car. The door clicked shut behind him immediately, a final, definitive sound. As Clark walked, his mind reeled, replaying the events of 12 years ago. Feelings he thought long buried, long forgotten, flared back to life with an agonizing intensity. He had been a 30-year-old widower then, a lonely single father to a 10-year-old Conrad, and he had fallen irrevocably in love with Natalie. After his beloved wife had tragically passed away during a difficult childbirth, Clark had kept his heart guarded, unable to forget her, and simply too consumed by work and the daunting task of raising his orphaned son. Despite a steady stream of eligible women drawn to his growing success and quiet strength, he had remained emotionally distant. When he had met 20-year-old Natalie, he hadn't expected anything serious. There was a significant age gap, for one, and then there was Conrad. Why would a vibrant young woman want to take on a man with a child, unless for purely mercenary reasons? Yet he had fallen for her, deeply. He loved her, but he was terrified to surrender to his feelings. His primary concern always the well-being of his son, who was entering the challenging, turbulent years of adolescence. But it turned out she had needed him too. Yes, Natalie had fallen in love with him, dreaming of becoming his wife, even a mother to Conrad. Perhaps Clark himself was to blame for not taking her seriously enough. He had convinced himself that she would eventually grow tired of them, abandon them, and he feared he couldn't bear another loss. So he had held back, carefully concealing the true depth of his affection. Feeling his emotional distance, Natalie had, in time, begun to accept the attentions of another man. Not just any man, but Clark's own business partner, Nicholas. It had been a searing double betrayal for Clark, though a part of him had rationally understood that it was probably for the best. Nicholas was younger and entirely unburdened by a past. I truly wish her happiness, he had thought then, a bitter taste in his mouth. And with Nick, she'll surely be happy. With me, who knows how it would turn out. But when he learned that his former friend and the woman he loved were planning to marry, he had cut ties with both of them completely. He hadn't seen or heard of them since. And now, this unexpected encounter. He had no idea how her life had turned out, why she had changed her name, whether Natalie was married now or, for some reason, raising her son alone. But did he need to know? Clark shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. Why did I even come here? Did I forget? The past must simply be released. This is about Conrad's future now. But can it be true? Has Conrad truly fallen for a woman more than 10 years his senior? A woman who already has a child? A cold wave of dread washed over him. What if Sanders finds out who Conrad abandoned his precious Charlotte for? The thought consumed the businessman so completely that he entirely forgot about his crucial investor meeting. It was only when he settled into his car and spotted the folder of contracts on the passenger seat that the important appointment crashed back into his awareness. Right, that's it, back to work. Why dwell on what's unknown? He resolved, pushing the unsettling encounter to the back of his mind. I'll talk to Conrad tonight. I'll get to the bottom of this relationship, he thought, a renewed sense of purpose firming his resolve. Clark Kingsley arrived at the important meeting not a moment too late, making a timely entrance, and conducted the negotiations with his usual sharp acumen, securing a successful outcome. Beyond the investors, a young legal professional was present at the meeting, impressing everyone with her profound knowledge and undeniable professionalism. Her name was Melody Ross. Hearing it, Clark flinched. Another Melody? He thought, a flicker of that old superstition. But as he studied her, observing her poised demeanour and listening to her articulate explanations, he mused, well, perhaps this Melody won't add to our problems after all. But the most unexpected twist awaited Clark Kingsley after the negotiations concluded. As the spacious conference room began to empty, his son Conrad walked in. Conrad approached Melody Ross, a warm smile lifting his face, and embraced her gently, then kissed her. Clark stood, blinking in utter bewilderment. It seemed the day's strange occurrences were far from over. Then Conrad, noticing his father, approached with Melody by his side. "Dad, you're still here. Perfect timing." Conrad grinned, his eyes sparkling with happiness. "Since you're here, let me introduce you. This is Melody, my fiancée, and we're getting married soon, by the way. Oh, and we're expecting a baby." How is this possible?" Clark stammered, utterly stunned. "You mean you're with this Melody? I thought... This morning I was at that house, the one you drove to yesterday." Melody Ross chuckled softly, a warm, melodic sound. "You mean you came to my house? And you spoke to Natalie, thinking it was me?" "No, that was my neighbour," Melody explained, a gentle smile playing on her lips. "Our house is a duplex, with 2 separate entrances. I live in one half, and she lives in the other with her son." "So, that's it," Clark breathed, a profound wave of relief washing over him, so potent it almost made his knees buckle. "And you were following me, weren't you, Dad?" Conrad said, a hint of playful reproach in his voice, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. "Well, your spy skills aren't quite top-notch, are they?" "Oh, forgive me, Conrad," Clark chuckled, a genuine unburdened laugh escaping him for the first time all day. "What else was I to do when you kept me in the dark? And by the way, I see no reason to hide a fiancé like this one." His mood instantly soared. He felt like embracing everyone in the room. It meant he had simply gone to the wrong door, and his son had no involvement with the Natalie from his past. The immense relief made him want to speak with his former love again, to explain his bizarre behaviour, and perhaps even laugh together at his colossal mistake. Though perhaps he could also offer some help, for he had no idea how she was truly living. From what he'd seen, things were clearly not well. The humble house, her pale appearance, and her son's quiet, anxious demeanour. She must be very lonely, he thought, a pang of sympathy stirring within him. After bidding farewell to Conrad and his radiant fiancée, he drove back to Natalie's house. This time, the door was opened by the boy. "Hello," Clark said, offering a friendly smile. "Do you remember me? I came to see your mum earlier. I was hoping to speak with her." "I remember," the child replied, his voice soft. "But Mum's not here right now. She went to the clinic, to the doctor. I don't know when she'll be back. You can wait if you want." Clark Kingsley stepped inside. The boy's name, he learned, was Hunter. "Do you and your mum live here? Just the 2 of you?" Clark asked, introducing himself. "Yes," Hunter confirmed, his gaze drifting to a framed photograph on the wall, a portrait of Nicholas. "My dad died in an accident when I was 3. I hardly remember him, just from pictures." "You're in school, aren't you?" Clark asked, glancing around the modest yet clean living room. "How are your grades?" "Yes, I'm in 4th grade. I'm not a straight A student, but I do well. Some subjects, though, not so much, like gym and art." "Interesting," Clark remarked, a genuine smile touching his lips. "Why is that? I always thought those were the easiest subjects." "I think so too," Hunter said, his voice dropping slightly. "It's just, I don't often have what I need. Sometimes it's gym clothes or the right shoes, and in winter, I need skis. For art, it's paints and sketchbooks, so they lower my grades because of that. And the other kids, they tease me. They say I'm poor Hunter explained, his young face clouded with sadness. Poor? Clark echoed, surprised. You mean you and your mum live in poverty? Why? Doesn't she work? Clark remembered Natalie's sharp mind and good education. She used to work, but she quit a year ago because she got sick, Hunter explained, his voice filled with a child's simple, heartbreaking honesty. I don't know what kind of sickness it is, but it's serious. She goes to the doctors all the time, and the medicine costs a lot of money. They say it can be cured, but she needs an operation. It's very expensive and we just don't have it, Hunter concluded, spreading his small hands in a gesture of helplessness. Clark was struck by the profound worry etched on the boy's young face, a burden far too heavy for a child to bear. Soon after, Natalie returned, her steps slow and weary. Her face, usually so composed, was etched with a subtle fatigue that Clark hadn't noticed before. Natalie, he began, his voice softer than he'd intended, I need to explain why I came earlier, and then there's something serious we need to discuss. They shared a brief, awkward laugh over his mistaken identity, a fragile bridge built over years of silence. But then Clark's expression grew serious. Hunter told me about your illness. What's wrong? And where are you being treated? Natalie hesitated, her gaze drifting to the worn armchair in the corner. It's really not something I want to discuss, Clark. But Clark was insistent, his concern overriding his usual reserve. He stepped closer, his voice earnest. You have to understand, Natalie, I'm not asking out of idle curiosity. I have resources, connections. I believe I can help you. She looked at him, a hint of old resentment in her eyes. Why now, Clark? We haven't spoken in years. You've forgotten about me. Forgot? What does forgetting have to do with it? Clark's voice rose, a touch of frustration creeping in. I have the means, Natalie. I will do this. And you should think about your son. Hunter is a wonderful boy, so worried about you. He deserves to have his mother healthy. Despite Natalie's continued reluctance, Clark pressed on, his determination unwavering. He pulled out his phone, making a call to a prestigious medical centre he often used for his employees. Within minutes, he had arranged for Natalie to be seen by a top specialist, personally guaranteeing all expenses for the necessary operation. A few days later, Natalie was admitted to the hospital. The surgery was a success, but her recovery was slow, marked by profound weakness. Clark visited her as soon as the hospital allowed, bringing her fresh flowers and light reading, trying to lift her spirits. One afternoon, as he sat by her bedside, Natalie reached out, her hand frail as it clasped his. "Thank you, Clark," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "There's a small hope, I think. But please, promise me something. If anything happens to me, you won't abandon Hunter. At the very least, find him a good children's home, just in case we don't see each other again, because he's your son too." Clark's mind reeled. "How can this be?" he choked, his grip tightening on her hand. "Why didn't I know? Wait, you married Nicholas. Isn't Hunter his child?" Natalie's eyes, filled with a fragile vulnerability, met his. "I was already pregnant with your child then, Clark. I thought you didn't want anything to do with me or a child. But Nicholas, he loved me, and he knew. I never deceived him. He accepted Hunter as his own, truly loved him. He was a wonderful father." A tear traced a path down her pale cheek. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was so hurt, so angry with you. It felt like you never took our relationship seriously." "Yes," Clark admitted, his voice rough with regret. "You're probably right there. I was a fool. I thought I wasn't what you needed. 10 years older, a widower with a child. But I remembered you, Natalie, all these years. That's why I never married anyone else." He squeezed her hand. "Now, don't say another foolish word. You will recover. The doctor said the danger has passed. We won't need any children's homes. I'm not leaving you or Hunter. Not now, not ever." And indeed, Natalie soon began to mend. Clark was overjoyed, his heart swelling with a happiness he hadn't known was possible. He now had 2 sons, Conrad, his eldest, and Hunter, his youngest. And soon a grandchild was on the way. Conrad and Melody were deep in their wedding preparations, their excitement palpable. But one evening, Clark and Natalie, their faces alight with a shared secret, announced that the upcoming wedding would have to be a double celebration. They too had decided to marry.